Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I want to talk about something that is incredibly important to me, and that is military veterans and first responders' mental health issues. I want to talk to you a little bit about an amazing organization that's doing great things in order to help treat military veterans and first responders with their mental health issues. And I'm also going to talk about how we're raising money to help fund this kind of treatment. And then I want to spend a little bit of time just talking to you personally about my own personal life and some of the things that I've done or that I've been through that help me relate to the kind of treatments that are being offered by organizations like Save a Warrior. The way we're going to be raising money for this organization is in just a couple of days on November the 16th, 2024. I'll be stepping off on a 50-mile ruck march with a small group of friends. We're going to be starting down in Galloway, Ohio. I can actually pull up the map for you right here if you're interested. We're going to be starting down in Galloway, Ohio as soon as the map loads. Down here at Battelle Darby Creek. We're going to use the Columbus bike path. We're going to walk all the way up through the west side of Columbus into the city, zigzag around a little bit in Grandview simply because I had to add some miles to make it 50. Then we're going to go up the campus area on High Street, back on the bike path. We're going to walk all the way up to Sunbury, Ohio. We're going to pass through 3 separate counties in central Ohio in order to do this 50-mile ruck march, and we're doing it all in one day. We're going to start at 4 p.m. and we're going to end at about somewhere between 10 a.m. and noon the following day. We're doing this to raise awareness for mental health issues with veterans and first responders, as well as we're doing this to try to raise money for an organization like Save a Warrior and potentially other charities that I might come in contact with in the future. If you go to my webpage, there is a donate now button, as well as you can go to fund the first. My webpage is the Todd Bates. It's just called Todd Bates 50-Mile Ruck. There's going to be some information on there, and in the future, there will be ways you can do the little contact us button where you'll be able to actually register to join me for this ruck in the future. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then when you donate, you can donate through Fund the First, but there is a link on my webpage for you to be able to do that. So if you don't remember Fund the First, just remember Todd Bates 50-Mile Ruck. Now, Save a Warrior, what Save a Warrior actually is, it's a facility down in southern Ohio, a little bit east of Cincinnati from what I saw on the map. And this is a facility where veterans and first responders basically go and spend a long weekend. They spend a long weekend and they get to they learn some techniques, they talk to each other, they listen to each other, have some classrooms, some different kinds of activities that will kind of help give them a psychological reset, reset their brain pathways, get them back to a hopefully a healthy state, and put them back out in the world with the tools that they need in order to continue to thrive in that environment. I have a bunch of friends that have gone to Save Warriors facility. I personally have never been there, although I would like to go at some point in the future. The friends that I know who have gone don't just go and then forget about it. They typically go and then they'll go back a year later or so because they found the techniques and the treatment to be so helpful that they want to continue to do it for the rest of their lives. It's an incredibly beneficial program, and one that I can stand behind, my friends stand behind. So I want to help fund them, and that's what we're doing with the Todd Bates Memorial 50-Mile Ruck, as we're raising money to donate a little bit to Todd Bates' hometown football team, but also a little bit to Save a Warrior for these issues that mean a lot to me. Now, as someone who is a combat veteran and a first responder, I believe I have a unique set of experiences that can help put some things in perspective about what it is that organizations like this do. And I just want to kind of talk you through my life and my personal experiences. This isn't something I've ever done on this channel, and I don't think that I've ever done it for too many people, believe it or not. But my experiences as a veteran and as a first responder, talking about my veteran status first, when I was a kid, all I ever wanted to do was be a soldier, and all I wanted to do was be a combat veteran. I grew up in the 80s. I mean, I graduated high school in the 1990s, But my time as a kid that I really developed was in the 80s. And, I grew up during the Cold War with Rambo movies, the Commando movies, all that kind of stuff. All of my role models were military veterans and combat veterans. A lot of people my parents' age, my aunts, uncles, great aunts and uncles, were veterans as well. I remember, talking to Vietnam vets. At least I didn't really talk to them much, but seeing Vietnam vets. I had uncles that were in the Korean War, that were in the Navy. And that was the only thing I wanted to do. Growing up, that was my plan for life. I had absolutely no expectations for anything in my life besides becoming a veteran and a combat veteran. So when I graduated high school in 1998, I went to basic training like a month after. I believe I graduated in June. I went to basic training in August of 1998. In 2003, I was given the opportunity to serve in combat during the invasion into Iraq. We deployed to Iraq in the spring of 2003. We came home in the winter of 2004. A lot of people who aren't military veterans, a lot of civilians, they have a hard time understanding what it's like for a soldier when they're in that kind of environment, because you're back at home and you're thinking about your son, your brother, your uncle, one of your close friends, one of your classmates, and you're watching the news and you're seeing stuff on the news every single day about soldiers getting killed, about roadside bombs, ambushes, mortar attacks, rocket attacks. And you have a certain perspective of what it was like for those soldiers over there. But for me, when I was there and I was living it, it was the best time of my life. I've never been so happy as I was when I was in Baghdad, especially on my first tour. I was around all of my best friends every single day. I woke up, my best friends were right next to me. I got to drive around in a Humvee all day with my best friends. Went on missions, was kicking indoors, doing some fun stuff. With my best friends, we were around each other all the time. It was like one big party. We felt like we were doing something important and I had a purpose, and I was part of a tribe. I was part of a group of people that were a very cohesive group of people working in a high stakes environment daily, on something that meant more, that was more important than me. It gave me a tremendous sense of meaning. It actually kind of gave me a sense of self-worth, and it fulfilled my sense of purpose. My whole life, that's all I wanted to do. And here I am in Baghdad, and I get to do this. I'm driving all over Baghdad, doing crazy things. And me, at the time, I was a 23 to 24-year-old Sergeant E5, and I was in charge of, I had a tremendous amount of responsibility. I felt very important, and I had a very high sense of self-worth. When we ended up coming home in 2004, my enlistment was over, but I wasn't quite done with being in combat. I didn't want to join the Army for another 6 years, because I didn't want to have to get back into that garrison life, sitting back in the States, just going through training rotations. I decided to go ahead and get out, but I wanted to go right back. So I went right back as a civilian contractor. I worked on a contract that was, we were hired by the Department of State. I did motorcade operations where we would put diplomats in our vehicles. We'd drive around Baghdad and the rest of Iraq, make sure that they safely got from one place to another, with, all of the external stuff going on. It was, took up what I did in the Army up to the next level, got to work at a higher level, doing something that was even more fun, more important, with a little bit more prestige. I absolutely loved my job. But then in 2006, I decided, you know what? I've spent 3 years in combat. I'm not going to do this forever. At some point in time, I have to transition into civilian life. So I came home. Coming home for me was a very strange experience. I actually enrolled in college. I enrolled at Ohio State and had signed up for classes when I was still in Baghdad. That was kind of a funny moment in itself, because I was sending emails to the administration's people telling them, hey, I can't just slide by the office. I'm currently in Baghdad. But I was a student there before, and I'd like to be a student at Ohio State again so I can come home and finish my degree. And I actually had to submit paperwork to the Ohio State University telling them that I was just in Iraq for work, that I wasn't an Iraqi citizen, because, my name, which is a white guy name, it's definitely not a Muslim Middle Eastern name. They wanted me to prove that I was actually a resident of the state of Ohio. So I had to get a letter from the State Department that said, yes, Officer Ben is only in Iraq for work, and he is actually a resident of the state of Ohio. I was paying Ohio taxes. I think I probably did just submit my tax returns. I don't quite know, but I came home and was an Ohio State student at the time, taking a double course load because I graduated from college in about 2 years. I went to school from 7:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night. That was my day every single day. I lived by myself. I had no friends. I had nobody. So I went from a world where I was with my closest friends every single day, going out in the world, doing something that I thought was very important, to now I'm back at home living in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself. All of my friends that I had growing up have moved on. They've all graduated from college. They've all got their real jobs, and they've got wives. They've got kids on the way. They're working their careers. And here I am, a college student. When I graduated from college, I was 27 years old, and I'm taking classes with kids that are like 18 and 19 years old. I had been around the world and seen a great many things. They've barely left their mom's basement. I didn't have anybody that I could relate to. To be completely honest with you, I felt completely lost for a long period of time. It took me years to try to figure out who I am. I went through different types of rebellion against myself, trying to deny who I was, trying to leave behind that past I had as a combat veteran, as a warrior. I wanted to give up the idea that I was living like a warrior's life, because I was no longer a warrior. I was just a regular person. I quit working out, and I quit eating right. I allowed myself to get incredibly overweight and fat and disgusting, because I thought that's what my life now was supposed to be. If there was an organization like Save a Warrior around back when I came home from Iraq, my transition probably would have been a lot more smooth. I probably would have had a much better time with it. And I want to make sure that, people who now are getting out of the military, transitioning, we're maybe don't have as many people in combat anymore, but we still have a lot of people coming out of the military, transitioning back home. And I want to make sure that the organization Save a Warrior has funding to go for years upon years upon years, so that future generations will have the opportunity that I did not have when I came home. Now transitioning to being a police officer, that world is completely different. A lot of people talk about post-traumatic stress from a soldier's perspective. And I have a hard time putting the two into perspective, but if I can compare the two, as a soldier, you spend a year in combat, you come home either 6 months or a year, depending on who you work for and what it is that you do. You spend your 6 months to a year in combat, then you come back home, you go through a block leave cycle, you go through a training cycle, then you go through a ramp up cycle, and then you go back into deployment. So you're spending like a year in between deployments. So you get that year at home with your family, your wife, your kids, all that other stuff, where you're not constantly faced with attack, not constantly facing traumas. You get to kind of adjust, reset, and then go back into combat. As a police officer, you don't have that opportunity. Every single day, you're transitioning on a daily basis from combat to home, combat to home, combat to home. And many police officers develop a sense where they're constantly living in that elevated combat sense of life. As a police officer, every single day you're out there experiencing these traumatic events. Even as a soldier, and as a police officer, when you go out in a town and you're working, there's no place that's safe. Every place that you go is potentially a dangerous place. We have police officers that are killed when they're pulling up on a domestic violence call. We also, unfortunately, we have police officers that are killed just putting gas in their cruiser on their cruiser district when they're just simply minding their own business. As a soldier, when I went out beyond the wire, I knew, okay, we just went outside the gate. Now it's game time to light up my senses, pay attention to what it is that I'm doing. Then when we'd come back in the wire, I actually had a habit and a tradition of, once we got through the checkpoints, I would take my helmet off, put it in my lap, and I would actually take a couple deep breaths and relax. We'd go back to our tents, we'd play video games, it was a good time. As a police officer, you don't have that opportunity. And then a lot of people think, well, when you get off work at the end of the day, you get to go home, be with your family. That's your time to decompress. But as a police officer, often, unfortunately, that's a time where you have to relive the experiences that you had during your shift. I can tell you that, like, I come home every day, and I'm not complaining about this, but when I worked third shift, I would come home in the morning as my wife and kids were getting up, getting ready to go to school for the day. I'm trying to decompress and spend some time with my kids, and my wife would ask me, "How was work?" I'm pretty sure almost every single time that my wife has asked me how was work, I'll either say, "Oh, it was fine," or "It was really busy." It was fine, it was really busy, or we weren't very busy. A lot of the times where I would say it's just fine is because I had something occur that night that I'm trying to forget about, that I'm trying not to relive. And the moment I come home, my wife says, "Hey, how was work?" Anything that I had decompressed and forgotten about, even if I'm saying it's fine, I'm automatically reliving the moments just a couple hours before where I was giving CPR to a dead infant. Or, those nights where you pull up on a very traumatic scene and you got somebody that's literally dying in front of you, and you're trying to talk to them, trying to figure out what happened, trying to figure out who the suspects are. And they quite literally speak their last words to you as you're trying to solve their murder. I've had nights where I responded to a call. I remember one night where I had to pick up an 11-year-old boy, and I had to carry him over his father's dead body and try to keep him distracted. After responding to a scene that became violent after a dispute over a parking spot. When I experience those things and I'm trying to deal with that and then come home and reset and try to put on a good face for my wife and kids, and my wife asks me how I'm doing, and I say I'm fine, quite often I'm reliving those moments and she has no idea. These are the kinds of stresses and traumas that police officers have to deal with on a daily basis. Police officers often are those people that spend all of their time and energy trying to fix other people, and they don't spend enough time trying to fix themselves. A program like Save a Warrior is the perfect opportunity for a police officer like me to leave the house for a weekend, a long weekend, go down there, talk to some people who have experienced the same thing that I've experienced, go through some, I don't even quite know how I want to say it, but, go through the process, take the steps necessary to deal with what I've dealt with in the past, and then also be reminded of the tools that are available to me to help deal with the things that I'm going to have to deal with in the future. That's what Save a Warrior does for veterans and for first responders. So that's why we're out here doing this rucking thing. A big part of being a functional member of society when it comes to kind of these warriors, these military veterans and police officers, is that you have to be healthy both mentally and physically. I think that rucking is one of those things that challenges you in both aspects. We're going to go out, we're going to walk 50 miles in in less than 20-hour period. That is something that taxes you incredibly hard mentally and physically. It's something that you really have to dig down deep, figure out what is important to you, and be able to push through. It's something that I find personally very beneficial. When I get done with the 50-mile ruck, last year I did it. I felt it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever experienced. One of the most rewarding events I think I've ever experienced. The weight that was kind of lifted off of me mentally after going through that and pushing myself through that, and the confidence that I gained for knowing that I had the ability to push through something that I never thought I'd be able to push through before. The effect that it had on me is almost indescribable. It's something that I absolutely love and I want to continue to do for as long as I can. And as I do it, I want to do it in order to raise awareness for the issues that people like me have faced, because of the because of the career that I have chosen, or the careers that I have chosen. And I want to do everything I can to raise the funds to be able to send other people to those things. And then just quickly before I end the video today, I want to talk about kind of the future plans of what I'm doing with this ruck event, because part of the money also that I'm going to take from this year's donations, I want to start a nonprofit. I think I'm going to call it Rucking for Heroes. And one of my goals for in the future is to have maybe 2 or 3 10K rucks throughout the year, where military members, veterans, first responders, and members of the community, we can all get together in honor of a common goal, raise some money for an amazing cause like Save a Warrior. And then the culminating event for that is going to be the 50-mile memorial ruck that's going to occur every single year right around Veterans Day. Some years it'll be before, some years it'll be after, but the date will always be on my webpage here. The goal for that is to promote good health, mentally and physically, for veterans and first responders, and also create a space where veterans, first responders, and members of the community can all get together, share some time, some space, do some walking together, and everybody can be reminded that we're all one community. I think that's about all I wanted to talk today about veterans and first responders' mental health. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. Please go and donate to the cause. I really appreciate your support.